So moving onward to our next session, that is scaling learning effectiveness in the age of AI with conversational role plays. I introduce our speaker, Mr. Arun Subramanian, co-founder at Sharpsell.ai. Mr. Subramanian is a co-founder of the Sharpsell.ai, leveraging his passion for travel and technology to address client pain points with data-driven insights. He holds a bachelor's degree in the mechanical engineering and an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. Welcome him with a huge round of applause.
So, so good morning and welcome all, to my presentation. So maybe I'll just start off with a quick overview on what we're trying to do here. And so, as part of Sharpsell, I think we initially did a lot of work with helping sellers learn. And what we realized was that there's a lot of skill development that's involved, and we realized that that's something that could scale up across the organization. And while we were thinking about how that part works, with the advent of a lot of AI tools that came in, and with, I'm sure all of you already use a lot of AI, already use a lot of tech to enable your learning, your team's learning, etc. So we realized that this is the moment where we see the applicability of what we have done, scaling up to much larger teams. And I think the idea here is to take about, I have about 20 minutes, is to take about 5 minutes to quickly talk about what we do, and then jump into what we have done, and then walk you through the thought process of how we went about building what we have built. Because I think more than the final product, I think there's been a lot of learning for us in terms of the questions that we had, and when we kind of ideated and bounced some of what we did with experts like all of us sitting here, I think we got a lot more insights and we got a lot more questions which helped us answer them and get things going. So the idea is to quickly share what we did. So very, very quick introduction. I'm Arun, founder of Sharpsell. So we work with a lot of clients across, so some of these clients are there. And we have 500,000, about 5 lakh plus learners who use Sharpsell on a week-on-week basis. And we've been globally recognized, G2, for example, you're 4.9 star rated, a lot of awards, etc. But I think the most important part is that when we started off, the whole question was that, hey, there's a lot of learning initiatives that are going out there, but there is always this question about that learners are not finding this learning effective, engaging. They're not able to relate it to this context because a lot of times learning is plug and play. So people say, हाँ यार, but मेरे यहाँ पे ये सब नहीं होता. This is not something that I face every day, and the moment that disconnect starts, then we have lost the learner because they, in their mind, have cut this off saying, यार वैसे ही तो काम में नहीं आएगा, तो what's the point of doing all this? And of course, they may end up doing some of these programs because we've asked them to do it. You follow up. I'm sure all of us have gone through the drill where you send out mails, involve managers, involve business heads. So finally, people end up doing it. But the most important question that people still have, and again, when I say people sitting here, people who are doing those learning modules have is to say, boss, I'm doing a lot of stuff, but will this ever translate to what I'm going to do at work? And that's one question that we kind of we're hoping to really address, and that's when we created PitchWiz. So the whole idea of PitchWiz is how could you have AI-powered role plays where people can actually practice, implement what they have learned in real scenarios, because in most scenarios, whatever skills we teach them, whatever inputs we give them have to be implemented in the real world. But today, unfortunately, a lot of what we are checking on is about you sitting in front of a system, you answering a few questions, and the real moment of truth, which is when, let's say a manager communicates with his or her employee, or when, somebody is really like looking at saying, hey, where can I execute some of what I learned as part of critical thinking, etc. That gets lost in transition because we are still measuring the knowledge part of it. We are not really able to understand the application part of it, and that usually ends up being, hearsay, saying, but hey, can I check with the manager on how they've implemented there? It's usually second-hand, third-hand information that we get. So the question was, can we have these role plays, especially conversational, where we can have people put in certain situations where they can exhibit some of the knowledge and skills that they've gained. The next thing that came in was saying, but we can kind of engage them in a conversation, but how are we going to get the context baked in? Because the context of every organization is different, the context of every individual is different, and the context of every team in an organization is different. So our question was to say, how do you do all this at scale? Because it's very easy to, I'll not say easy, it's very simple to call some consultant, say, hey, let's kind of look at creating some situations, role plays for this specific role. And of course, that's going to do, but if we have to scale it across, how are we really going to make this contextual across the length and breadth of our organization, where every role is different, every challenge is different. The third part that came in is saying, even if we contextualize it, we realize that every organization has their own learning metrics. They have their own competency roadmap, competency mapping. They have their own role skill mapping. So the next question was to say, how are we really going to ensure that we are able to we're going to kind of make this meaningful for every specific organization and every specific role and competency, because that's when we realize that we can't go up with a standard set of competencies and say, hey, these are 10 competencies that we measure, can you please pick and choose what it is? Because the same competency name, what we realize, means different things in different organizations. The rating scales and competencies were very different. Somebody would say, if somebody exhibits this level of understanding, then I would rate them a 1 on 5. In another organization, they'll say, no, in my case, it's 2 on 5. So we realized that we can't kind of build a product that we think works. We'll have to build something that fits into the environment and the reality of what our clients are working on. And finally, of course, the question was to say, how do you get insights in terms of what happens, how it happens, etc. So before I jump into the challenges that we faced in terms of going through this, I'll quickly show you an example of how it actually looks out. So for example, let's say that so let's say this is so here, for example, I don't know if you're able to read this on the back, maybe I will. So it says you're in the midst of a half-yearly review meeting in a well-regarded IT firm. So again, the context, you can have this. And the idea is that, there's a critical conversation between your team member Vikram and you. And Vikram has shown signs of discontent and declining performance. The goal is to address these issues, take them head on, and provide constructive feedback, and find a way forward with Vikram. And your idea is to, and we say kind of look at some of these things. Some of the issues that we've faced with Vikram are that there have been deadlines, there have been decreasing participation, quality of code is an issue, etc., etc. And what we say is, as part of this role play, I expect you to demonstrate some of these skills. I expect you to demonstrate empathy, communication skill, and listening. And I also expect you to cover some of these major points as part of this conversation. So now that I've given this, so what really happens is I kind of go back here. I say start this conversation. And let's say in this case, I'm the manager. I'm reviewing Vikram. So I will start off saying, hey, hi Vikram. I think this is an important meeting that we are having to discuss your performance issues. I think off late we've kind of found a lot of issues with respect to your code, etc. So wanted to quickly understand what is your take on this. So let's say this is how I'm starting the conversation. Is this the right way to do? Maybe not. But this is how I'm kind of starting the conversation. And the idea is not to kind of tell people what is right and what is wrong, but the idea is that if you were to put somebody in that situation, how are you going to have this conversation with Vikram? So what we have done is, while Vikram has responded, so maybe I'm just going to play Vikram's response. Sorry. In this case, could we get the volume from the HDMI, please? Is that going to be possible? Sorry? Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, I'm just going to pull this off HDMI for a minute so that you can hear the audio. Yeah.
There's been a lot on my mind, but not an excuse. We've dealt with more complex situations before. I'll gear up and roar. I have realized there's been a dip in my performance. There's been a lot on my mind, but not an excuse, I know. We've dealt with more complex situations before. I'll gear up and face this head on. Let's chalk out a plan.
So Vikram says, but I don't say there's a major issue, but I'll kind of figure out and do this. So my response is going to be, sure, Vikram, I know you will definitely bounce back, but I think there are certain issues that we had faced with respect to, you not being active with respect to involving yourselves in meetings, and you have not been mentoring, some of your teammates. Plus the quality of code is also diminished quite a lot in recent times. So is there something that, that you think I should know regarding why there is a drop? Because this is not how you were, let's say, 6 months ago. So what I'm doing is I'm just having this conversation with Vikram. I'm sorry, there's some tech issues, so I'm not able to show you how that works. But the idea is that you have this conversation, and then Vikram responds back based on the kind of conversation that I'm having. So what you see is that I'm having this conversation in English. But the reality also is that most of these conversations don't really happen in English. While we say the mode of communication in office is English, the reality is that most conversations that we have one-to-one are in Hindi or in regional languages, or a mix of, let's say, English kind of thing. So now people might say, hey, is this something that's even practical, that you're expecting somebody to have pure English conversation? So maybe I'll just continue this conversation. So
I appreciate your feedback, but I wouldn't say I've been unengaged in meetings. It feels as though I've been bypassed in some key decisions, which is not what I'm accustomed to. In terms of mentoring my peers, I'm feeling somewhat overlooked. It might not be apparent, but it's impacting my motivation. On top of work, there have been some personal issues cropping up too, which I've been dealing with, that might have spilled over slightly into the workplace.
So Vikram says that, hey, I've been overlooked, and there are some things in work. So let's say what will happen if I respond? Because typically if somebody says this, I'm not going to continue in English. So I'll say, अरे विक्रम, ये तो पहले ही बोलना था आपको, we are here to support you, and जो भी आपको support चाहिए आप मुझे बताओ, and we'll figure out how to kind of get this going. And यदि आपको लग रहा है कि आप उतना time नहीं दे पाओगे काम में 1-2 हफ्ते के लिए, तो वो चलेगा. We'll kind of find a way around, but you figure out how to be in a better place, and I'm sure work will kind of follow through, and I'm sure you'll deliver. So what I've done is I've spoken in something which is half Hindi, half English. And of course, as you realize, my Hindi is heavily accented. It's not grammatically right. So the way we've looked at it is to say, the reality is that people are not going to speak like grammatically right language. People are going to have conversational speech, and our objective was to say, how are we going to even interpret what is happening conversationally, and how are we going to push this? So, for example, this is how Vikram responds.
I truly appreciate your understanding and support. It's made things easier to share. I'm committed to regain my previous performance level. Let's discuss a way forward to improve the quality issues and my involvement in decision making.
So maybe I'll just end this saying, sure, Vikram, I think let's do one thing. Now that we are on the same page, let's kind of probably set up a 30-minute meeting, next week, and let's kind of chart out what the next steps are, so that, some of these issues that we face don't occur later. I hope that's okay. So now I've kind of given my suggestion, and this goes in. So maybe I'll just plug this back in after playing this audio. So I think this is Vikram's last thing.
Sounds like a constructive plan. I'm ready to take concrete steps forward and rebuild myself into the asset I know I can be for the team. I'll gather my thoughts over the weekend, and we can meet next week to discuss an action plan.
So you'll see that this is basically, I said I want to do it next week, so Vikram says I can do it next week. So this is something that's hyper contextual. So what has really happened in this is that we've had this conversation, but for us, what really mattered was that when we started doing this, and I'll quickly walk you through what. So the first few questions that came in is, hey, what's going to happen to infra and security? Because the questions people came is, hey, ye ChatGPT to ye kar sakta hai. But then the question is that, is it going to be contextual? Are we going to get reports? Are we going to use ChatGPT? We said, no, we'll not use OpenAI LLM because there is a security concern. So we have, for example, we said there are going to be language models that we'll have to train. Then there's a question of should we do audio or video? We realized that audio is probably easier because people, by the way, we also had a video model and people got hyper conscious. Because not only are you like talking and putting yourself in a situation, but suddenly you are, being recorded, and that kind of gave a very, different color to what was happening. So we said we'll stick with audio. And like I said, how are you going to understand English? How long should this be, etc. So this was one part. But the second part was how are we going to make it contextual, which means that what is going to be the client-specific context, what is going to be the persona of the AI, because the AI is taking on a persona and responding. It could be the role of an employee, it could be the role of a customer, it could be the role of a colleague. So how are you able to define what this persona is going to be? And that was very important. And we said beyond the persona, there is also a mood in which the customer or your persona is talking. Sometimes they could be friendly, sometimes they could be difficult, sometimes they could be agitated. So in which situations do you want people to practice and exhibit some of their skills? And question is, and more important part is, we don't want to kind of say, hey, I'm going to impart something absolutely new and you go learn something and kind of crack it. So our objective is also to say, how do you reinforce some learning that has already been given? Because this is not like yet another program which comes in where you say, you know what, we'll transform it. For us, we look at this as something that is going to reinforce some of the things that we are doing. So how are we going to look at that? So that's something that really mattered to us. And this is something that really was the difficult part, because initially we said we'll kind of have our own competencies. And like I told you, the problems came in saying, hey, who's defining the competencies? And rightfully so, some of our clients came back saying, Arun, who the hell are you to tell me what my competencies should be and how I should rate my folks? So I have my own competencies, I have my own ratings. Can you work around that? And we realized that that has to be configurable because it's very different for everybody. And when we looked at the final feedback, and this is actually interesting. So when I looked at the final feedback of how, what happens in the role play, for instance, you will see that, for example, let's say this is the feedback. So you will see that I had two things. So one is I have a score, which says Arun has got 3.5 on 5. So this usually feedback takes about 30 seconds to get. And Arun also gets something saying AI-based feedback, which is a subjective feedback on how you handle this specific situation. Then I also get to see, hey, I wanted you to cover certain points. For example, I wanted you to approach this with empathy, so that was done. So I never spoke about Vikram's past contribution and how I really value them. So I just talked about saying he'll go back to your old glory, but I didn't really stress on this, if you remember the conversation I saw. So it says, hey, this is something that's partially covered. Specific performance concerns with examples. I quoted specific examples to talk about why the performance is dipping. I didn't talk about potential growth opportunities. I just said I'll offer you support. So it says, hey, in this part, you've partially covered this. And action plan, I said, yeah, we'll kind of do this next week. And Vikram said, let's plan it for next week. So what really comes out is to say, hey, I wanted you to have a structure to this conversation. I wanted you to address some of these points. Did you do this? Yes or no? So you get to see, in case you have not covered, it will say not covered. And you also get a skill evaluation based on your rating. It could be a 0 to 10 scale, 0 to 5 scale, whatnot. You get this part. And you also get some conversational intelligence. You kind of look at, what is the confidence, energy, what pace are you speaking at, etc., etc. But the most important part for us was, coming to this, saying, when you come to rating, who should give this rating? Should this rating be something that Sharpsell gives? Should this rating be something that you give? Should it be subjective or objective? Because we had certain clients come up and say, Arun, the rating should just be on points covered. So if people have covered all the points, give them 5. What's wrong with this? Then some of the clients came and said, no, but rating should be a weighted average of all the skill scores. I give a lot of emphasis for empathy, so uska 50% hona chahiye. And then the rest of it, I want 25, 25. And we realized that that's, while for us, we looked at it as a simple number. We realized that that's very, very specific to different organizations, because the way you want to kind of communicate how somebody is done in a practice scenario is very, very different. So we said this also is something going to be that's going to be hyper configurable, and we will make this objective. So that when people look at saying, why did I get a 3 on 5? Then you can always go back and tell them that, hey, these points you didn't cover, skill rating looks like this, the explanation looks like this, and so on. So I think that's something that we are done. And I think the most important part of it is what's really happening with, the final report. And for us, the idea is that when you're looking at doing this role play, for example, let's say, if this is what I'm looking at, so you kind of add this part. Let's say the role play description that we saw is here. Then you set up saying how many number of conversations you want. You said, do you want it to be 3 conversations, 5 conversations? Do you want it to be small, large? That's something that we can decide. You can talk about what is the Vikram's context. In this case, AI persona is Vikram. So I say you're Vikram and you're doing this. I'm saying what is Vikram's state of mind in this. And I can also say Vikram is going to be aggressive. I can kind of talk about which language. So like I said, it can be conversational Hindi, conversational English and whatnot. And more importantly, I can choose from my skills. So let's say if I say that I also want to look at, for example, I want to look at effective communication. And you see that I've already given a rating on what is 1, what is 2, what is 3, what is 4, and what is 5. So I'm saying as part of this role play, I'm also assessing what this is. And this part is interesting where you say, what I showed you was a practice scenario where you could have somebody practice it. But the idea is that you could also use this as an assessment. I'll say, boss, I've already taught you something. You're supposed to know this. So I'm not going to give you any help. I'm not going to tell you what are the points to be covered. I'm not going to tell you what is, what skills I'm assessing you on. So I'll just show you, for example, if I knock all this out, I'll just show you that you have to do this role play. I'll tell you that you're talking to Vikram. You take it forward from there on. You're going to be much more blinded. So this is where it goes. And in case you want to add additional context, you can even add this saying, for example, in this case, I say, Vikram will end the conversation and, you kind of say if you're not this. So I can even kind of direct this into a certain part. So I think these are some of these things that, some of these customizations. I know it looks like a lot, but a lot of this is optional. So idea was to, really figure out how do we kind of hand this over, hand over the setup of this role play to everybody who wants to run a program without them having to come to us. Because the idea is how we're going to immerse people in their own part. So I think we had a lot of fun and we had a lot of insights in creating this. And I think, like I said, thanks to the learning community because we actually bounced this off a lot of our learning clients, our prospective clients to understand what would work for them. And they've kind of taken this through. So I hope this gave you an insight of how some of what, what goes behind building something that is AI. Driven and what are the challenges that somebody like us would face and how that might relate to somebody like you who's trying to drive these programs. So just thought I'll share these thoughts with you and in case you have any other specific thoughts you want to understand more, you want to discuss, I'm going to be right outside and would be glad to have a discussion with any of you. So thanks a lot folks, really appreciate this and hope you kind of got some insight on how AI could potentially be used in driving some of these learning and skills. Appreciate this. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Arun Subramanian, for sharing your thoughts. To do the felicitation, I request Ms. Shweta Sharma, Head of Learning and Development at Shubham Housing Finance, to please join us on the dais.